views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of OpenBxRx, BronxNet's special coverage providing you the latest information that matters to you during COVID-19, the coronavirus. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, and today is Tuesday, May 5th. Coming up, we'll discuss how the Garifuna community has been impacted by COVID-19 and what Garifuna Community Services is doing to help. Then we'll explore and define the digital divide with the president of Science and Arts Engagement. After that, Social Creatures is a nonprofit organization seeking to support families through social connectedness. We'll speak to the founder later on. And we'll learn how the YMCA continues to offer remote resources, services, and even workouts with the YMCA at home through the pandemic. So please, stay tuned. OpenBxRx starts now. Welcome to OpenBxRx on BronxNet. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, inviting you to get social with us at BronxNet TV on Instagram and Twitter, and BronxNet Community Television on Facebook. Also, if you're watching us on cable, you can continue to stay up to date with our on-screen social media feeds, providing the latest COVID-19 and community updates. With a population of approximately 200,000 Garifuna living in New York City and a large community in the Bronx and Harlem, support for the community has been limited due to COVID-19. However, a Bronx-based organization continues to support and provide safe assistance for the Garifuna population through volunteer work. Joining us now to discuss is Edson Arzu, Community Liaison at Garifuna Community Services. Thank you for joining us, Edson.
Thank you for having me.
The first thing I want to learn about is, of course, about the Garifuna population here in the Bronx in particular. Can you tell us more about the community here?
Sure. Like you mentioned, there are approximately 200,000 Garifunas here in New York, primarily in the Bronx, also in the other boroughs, but the Bronx have the bigger populations than the other boroughs. They're mainly in the South Bronx area, the majority, but you also could find some of them in the north part of the Bronx as well, and in Brooklyn, Manhattan, in Harlem.
Can we learn about Garifuna Community Services and some of the services that you were able to provide through the organization prior to COVID?
Sure. Garifuna Community Service started in 2014, and it was due to the mass migration of immigrants that was crossing the south border, which means, Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, Belize, all the way to El Salvador. Due to that, that's how Garifuna Community Service was born. And we service pretty much people who are experience human rights violations, human trafficking, domestic violence, political persecutions. They're trying to come to the U.S. To seek for political asylum. That's our main population that we serve at the moment. Prior to COVID-19, some of the services that we provide were registration for school for the children, healthcare registration as well. We were able to provide ESL classes for the parents and the children that were just coming in, help them out with actually trying to adjust being in the U.S. We also was providing services for if anybody needs somebody to go with them to the court, how the immigration court system works, as well as first IDs if they didn't have any ID, because a lot of them lost their passport and IDs on the way coming over here, and also to the political asylum application process. We also help them out with that, and to connect them with pro bono immigration lawyers as well.
Right. How have you seen at Garifuna Community Services the impact of COVID-19 on the Garifuna population?
Oh, wow. It has been major. Right now on social media, there have been 51 Garifuna that has passed away in the Bronx due to COVID-19. the economic toll that it has taken on the Garifuna community, on the families, is major. A lot of these families are either working, taking care of the elderly, working in supermarkets, working in hospitals as well. So it has impacted a lot, and a lot of them that were working are currently not working right now. So that's the whole. Our services right now has changed dramatically,
Right.
Because of COVID-19.
How so? How have the services changed? I know that before, it was interpersonal. People would come in for the services in person, and there were like food pantries and everything. And I've visited the church where it was happening before, where I met Gregoria
Right.
Nunez, the director. But how has that changed now? How have the services been remote?
Right now, it's pretty much on a conference calls, either through video or to text. If anybody will have any concerns, because they don't know pretty much really what's going on when it comes to the immigration side of it. They don't know pretty much how it's gonna impact when this whole thing is goes back to normal, whatever that is. Um, uh, so there are concerns about that. So we pretty much are having conversations with other base organizations that are dealing with the same issue, or that are providing the same type of services for the same type of population, the immigrant population undocumented. Um, so we trying to see how we'll be able to shift what we was doing before, or add when uh, we go back to whatever normal is going to be after the post COVID-19, which is a challenge for us right now, because people were having fear before COVID-19, and they have even more fear and more trauma now during this, and they're going to have additional more trauma post COVID-19. So we have to be able to prepare for this.
I also noticed on the Garifuna Community Services pages on Facebook and Instagram that, you're doing outreach when it comes to the census. Can you talk about the importance of having the Garifuna community count in the census?
Oh, this is extremely, extremely important. Our community it's one of the community that has been undercounted in the U.S. period overall, even more so in New York and the Bronx. We have been doing a campaign for the census in 2018 to 2019. Garifuna Community Service saw 6,000 people, right? And those are people that have not been counted, that weren't counting during the 2010 census, right? So we reach out to those individuals, we reach out to their families. We was doing an aggressive campaign when it comes to the census, thanks to Isha Sumner, Gregoria Flores. We have a lot of influencers within the Garifuna community that came in and stepped up, and it was a collective work where a lot of people were aware, and they had no idea. Like myself, for example, I never, 2010, I really didn't, I didn't count it myself, right? But now, having more knowledge and educating ourselves and how important it is to our community, and to the Latino community, to the Black community, we made it our business to create a campaign and get the people involved who are influencing in our community. So like that, we could reach out everybody, not just in New York, but in the other states where Garifuna are.
Right. How are you finding this remote work to be challenging? Because I know beforehand, like we said earlier, it was more in person, and the outreach for the census, participation was also in person. So you're able to talk to people face to
Right.
face. Is there like a technological also gap? Is there a lack of technology when it comes to people not being able to access, remote work or services?
Yes. One of the things is, of course, we need the laptops. We need the iPads, which we don't have a lot of at the moment. So those who do have, like myself, since I have my laptop, it's easier for me. But the most challenging thing is what other resources are available for those people who are undocumented, are immigrants, and the whole court has that. What other resources we could provide for them, which has been the most challenging thing from this whole situation, because a lot of them don't have any food, a lot of them don't have any money, they are not working. A lot of them just gave birth, so that's another challenge with a new child. In addition now. So that has been for us. That has been our greatest challenge. Not much of the technology, because mainly like, our clients, they have WhatsApp, or they have, so we communicate in that way.
Right.
But the challenge for them and for us is the additional resources available for them while the courts reopen.
Right. Let's say someone is listening right now and they're seeking some resources or services. How can they get in touch with Garifuna Community Services at this time?
Sure. They could go to our website, is www.garifunaCommunityServices.org, or they could go to our Facebook or Instagram page. They could send you a message to there, Garifuna Community Services, or 929-371-2495.
Thank you, Edson. And just a final message for the Garifuna community.
Sure. Please just follow the health guidelines that are in place right now. Keep yourself safe. Keep your family safe. And these things will blow over. And together, if we come in together as a community, we will overcome anything.
Oh, one more thing, Edson. So if people want to donate as well or help with any services or resources for you, for the Garifuna Community Services, is that possible through the website as well?
Yes, it is.
Thank you so much again for your time, man.
Thank you, Sonyi.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Folks, please visit Garifuna Community Services, Inc. on Instagram as well to stay in touch. And OpenBxRx will be right back.
On the federal level, we need to make sure that mortgages and rent are completely taken care of so that there is no excuse for a person being removed from their home.
With hashtags like Cancel Rent and Can't Pay May, District 14's Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez held a virtual conversation with more than 2,000 viewers to call for a moratorium on rent and mortgage payments.
It's not that it's impossible to do, and it's not that we can't do it. It's that we lack enough politicians with the political will to actually help people who are tenants and to actually help people who are mom and pop landlords.
AOC went on to suggest a plan to tackle this ongoing issue, one she says is not the only feasible option.
One way that we can cancel rent is to suspend mortgage payments for the cancellation period. Let's say we want to start with 3 months. Suspend mortgage payments for 3 months. Tack that on to the end of the repayment period. So let's say you have a 10-year mortgage, just suspend it for 3 months and make it a 10-year and 3-month mortgage so that you just make 3 additional payments at the very end.
Frequently forgotten, Ymca residents are experiencing housing issues that are constantly being overlooked. Ymca organizer Jasmine Sanchez weighs in.
And while Ymca states that they are communicating with residents, they are using methods that don't apply to all of the Ymca residents. There are 600,000 of us, and using Twitter isn't going to reach everyone. This year, Cuomo again did not put any money into the budget for Ymca, showing once again that Ymca does not matter.
Sanchez also points out that social distancing is often not possible in Ymca housing.
We're facing an economic crisis. We're facing food insecurity and, quite frankly, a health disaster when we're told that we have to social distance and our elevators are out and you see people cramming in without PPE.
To get involved, call your congressperson and urge them to sign in support of the bill to cancel rent and mortgage payments nationwide. You can also call on Governor Cuomo to cancel rent by clicking the link below.
This pandemic hits and the banks and the hedge funds are protected and they even get little sweetener deals. And then everyday working people and people trying to just make things, make it by are the ones that are feeling the brunt of this crisis.
Reporting for BronxNet, Franchesca, Feliz.
Welcome back to OpenBxRx. COVID-19 has brought forth the many disadvantages low-income communities face. Our next guest wrote an op-ed on what is referred to as the digital divide and how it impacts communities of color. What is the digital divide and how did we get here? Joining us now is Stan Altman, professor and president of the nonprofit organization Science and Arts Engagement New York. Thank you for joining us, Stan.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
The first thing we want to start with is, of course, learning about Science and Arts Engagement New York. Can you just tell us about that?
Sure. In 2013, a colleague of mine at the Graduate Center heard about a gallery that had been opened by Trinity College in Dublin called the Science Gallery. And the idea was to attract young people into careers in the STEM fields. The Irish government wanted to diversify their economy. And we thought that this was a wonderful idea and venue for trying to attract young Black and Latinx students into the STEM and tech fields because they're so underrepresented in areas that are growing with really well-paying jobs. And we felt that this was an opportunity. And so both of us, being alumni of City College, engaged City College to begin to look at opening up such a gallery in Harlem. And when the budget crisis hit City University in about 2014-15, we had started the process, decided we couldn't let it stop because the college was now facing budget issues. So we formed a separate nonprofit, Science and Arts Engagement in New York, and have been working to open this gallery ever since. We have subsequently reconnected with City College. So I've been spending the last year up at the college working on the gallery, for which we've done 2 exhibitions, one around basketball and one around the science of music, jazz, and hip hop.
Wow. It sounds wonderful. I'm going to have to visit my alma mater, City College.
Aha, wonderful.
And now can we lead into, Stan, the digital divide? What does that mean for those who are not familiar with the term?
Well, the digital divide means that the facilities that are now being provided through the internet, both in terms of commerce, in terms of jobs, in terms of educational opportunities, are really accessible to people who have the means and resources to both buy the equipment, computers and tablets, as well as pay for subscription services to get access to the internet. If you're in a low-income community, or if you're working and earning less than $30,000 a year, it's kind of hard to figure out how you're going to pay $60 a month for an internet subscription. And so what's happened is that there's an unequal distribution of who has access to the internet and all of the digital technology that's now driving our society. And the divide almost, it's not perfect, but almost divides between urban low-income communities and even rural communities around the country, and those who are in more privileged to have access to resources. And this has become pretty much to the forefront through the coronavirus because everything is moved online. And if I don't have access to online, if I don't have a tablet or a computer, even if I have access to the internet, or if I'm at home with the rest of my family, it makes it very hard for me to get an education. Whereas if I had my own room, I had access to high-speed internet, I have a computer, I have friends who also are on networks so I can talk to. Mm-hmm. It's not an equal, equitable situation.
Right. And like you said, Stan, the COVID-19 pandemic has kind of brought this inequity to the forefront when it comes to both students and the education system, as well as older people. Seniors, for instance, in Ymca, don't have access to tech, and they've been getting, these updates and all these resources being sent out by the housing authority, but have no access to learn about these things.
Well, that's exactly right. In fact, from my perspective, we're not going to go back to an era in which the internet wasn't an integral part of our life. The change that's been brought about by the coronavirus has now put in play a whole other series of things that now it's going to depend on the internet. I think we're going to see more online education than we've done before. Telemedicine is going to become an important component of the way in which healthcare gets provided. the access to timely, reliable, truthful information, which is accessible over the internet. I remember when Hurricane Sandy happened. A friend of mine was commissioner of the Department of the Aging. At some point, they didn't know where seniors were. So it was impossible to rescue seniors from high-rise apartments because they had no idea that they were there.
Wow.
And so I think if we don't provide places like Ymca and people who live there access to this internet, and if we don't provide access to the internet for people who live in low-income communities, we're going to make it impossible to access basic services that people are going to need to live and work in this 21st century. And I think that's one of the reasons why, and part of what I've been writing is saying that we really need to finish the information highway. Just like in the 50s, we built a highway across the entire United States. Or later on, when they built the electrification of rural communities so everybody would have access to electricity. There's no reason that everybody can't have access to affordable internet services in this day and age.
Right. And now, Stan, just bringing up 5G and the 5G towers that we keep hearing about, they're a big topic today. First, what is 5G? And second, will the implementation of this technology worsen the digital divide or help it?
Well, I think it's going to worsen it for the following reasons. What has progressed with all of these various versions from 1G to 2G to 4G, increasingly it's provided access to internet services. The 5G component is an outgrowth of the fact that what we now want to be able to do are things like driverless cars. We want to be able to do all sorts of sophisticated operations which require very fast response times. And a 4G network, it takes much longer to download information. So if I have a driverless car and it needs to make a split-second decision, it can't wait for a delay in getting information back from where it stores all this knowledge. The 5Gs are very fast. They do very quick downloads. They have much greater capacity to handle activity on the internet. One of the things we're experiencing today with so much use on the internet for education, for just basic communication between people who can't visit each other, is that at times you find internet speeds really slow down. 5G networks are meant to be significantly faster, and they're able to handle maybe 1,000 times more users than current 4G networks. But it also means that if you need equipment that interfaces with 5G internet service. So if I have a cell phone and it's a 3G or a 4G, I can currently work on the current network, but it won't work on a 5G network.
Right.
Which means that I either have to spend several $100s to upgrade my equipment, or I'm going to work on slower networks while everybody who can afford it is going to migrate to faster networks. And as you probably know, as soon as that's the marketplace, everybody who has a commercial venture is going to produce products that move towards 5G, which means people who've got slower speeds get left with, less up-to-date and quality products.
Right. So this is what we refer to as the new normal. There's no going back after this.
I don't think so. I think, for one, if you just look at the impact of the shutting down of the economy has produced on terms of state budgets, and the predictions of how long it's going to take the economy to come back in order to allow governments to function, and even for the economy to function as it did before this pandemic, we're talking about several years. I mean, I think and we're not talking about, even when we allow people to begin to go back to work, we're not talking about letting them to go back to concerts and baseball games where there's crowding. So people's lifestyles are going to change. And so, yeah, this isn't the new normal. I think unless there's a real voice that talks to the issue of having to really approach social equity from the point of view of basic services needs to get done. And as long as the federal government is spending trillions of dollars to go into debt and are providing significant money to large corporations, either through unknown tax breaks or through direct grants and aids. They can come up with the money to build the information highway. They can come up with the money to find a solution that provides affordable cost access to the services everybody needs.
I think it's feasible. Stan, can you also speak about the importance of science and art fields and representation in tech industry as a whole?
Well, absolutely. There are really three things here, I think. One, the way in which work was done in the 20th century was very, very isolated and siloed. It was very much a repetitive task. It assumed that you could predict and produce standard products, right? The 21st century is quite different. It's not a whole mass production anymore. In fact, the internet has allowed startup companies to produce individual items tailored to a person's particular taste. And so the 21st century really requires a whole different set of skills, even just to be able to navigate everyday life. You need to be able to deal with uncertainty, as we're rapidly discovering during the coronavirus. You've got to be able to be and discern information. So you have to be able to be a critical thinker and a problem solver. You have to be able to communicate, because you don't really have the luxury in many cases of being able to just walk and do something. You have to communicate through now all sorts of technology. And you need to be technologically literate, even if you're not a technologist. You need to be able to understand how to use it. Mm-hmm. And I think what the issue we now face is that we're not really preparing people, and government's not really preparing itself to deal with these changes that are taking place in this whole digital age. And I think places like City College, which is one of the reasons that we decided to work in Harlem, and clearly my heart is in the South Bronx, so you understand why just crossing over the bridge into my old neighborhood is important for me. I think the college has a whole history going back to its original founding in 1847, dealing with trying to find ways to bring people who, in a sense, would have been excluded from career opportunities and would have been excluded from a higher education because they couldn't afford it, to find ways to help with upward mobility, to find ways to provide access to the economy. And I think unless we begin to focus on really re-educating how we do the schools in low-income communities and the resources they have, how we encourage young people to get excited about things that they can do. One of the things that strikes me doing work across the city university, I run a competition involving IBM Watson AI, is that the creativity of young people, and all you really need to do is encourage them that they can do it. Yeah. There's this sense, I can't do it, I can't try. Having grown up on the streets of the South Bronx, I understand that quite well. I was fortunate to be able to go to Stuyvesant and then go to City College and find out that, wow, I really can do some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I think unless we do things like that, we're going to take a whole generation of young people and exclude them from the job market at exactly the time when the tech sector is beginning to create all these jobs. And then there are all these other jobs that are not technical that support the tech sector. People who have psychology backgrounds, who are communication majors, who are even philosophy majors, because you have to understand the human factors part of using this technology. And so our concern at City College, and my colleagues and our concern why we want to do the Harlem Gallery of Science, is to show that there are ways that we can invest in our young people to get them excited and to convince them that there are careers that they can really take on and do, and then earn a decent living.
Thank you. Thank you, Stan, for joining us and for providing this wealth of knowledge. And we're here at BronxNet. We're here to support the Harlem Gallery of Science. Once all this is over, hopefully sooner than later, we will be there to support as best we can.
Well, we would love to have you, and I'd love to do this again. And thank you very much for inviting me.
It's been wonderful. Folks, you can visit scienceartsengagementny.org to learn more about Stan's nonprofit organization, highlighting the importance of STEAM careers in communities of color. OpenBxRx will be right back. Welcome back to OpenBxRx. Earlier, we spoke about the digital divide affecting low-income communities. Our next guest founded a nonprofit organization to help support families and organizations through digital strategies, making social connectedness a priority during the pandemic and beyond. Joining us now is Dr. Rose Perry, who is a neuroscientist, physiologist, and the founder of Social Creatures. Welcome, Dr. Perry. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be able to talk to you today.
The first thing I wanted to start off with, of course, is learning about Social Creatures and what made you find this organization at this time.
Yeah, so we rapidly founded back in March when we realized that, we were going to be facing this pandemic and the stay-at-home orders and social distancing for the long haul here. And we're a group of researchers, clinicians, advocates, and creatives who have seen through our own work time and time again how important it is to stay socially connected with others. So when I say social connectedness, I mean feeling connected with another individual, feeling close with others, having a sense of belonging. And we know from our work that it's great for our mental health and for being happy, but it's also really important for our physical health and well-being. So our mission, when we saw that schools were closing and their stay-at-home orders, was to begin bridging science, technology, and advocacy to make sure that everyone could still readily connect with their social support groups, whether that's family or something more extensive, no matter the circumstances. So as you can imagine, that has focused a lot on eradicating inequities related to the ability to connect with social supports outside of the house, because we see, even outside of the pandemic, there's a digital divide, and there are populations that are disproportionately impacted by the digital divide. So for instance, on average, households that are from lower income or lower socioeconomic status are less likely to have a computer in the home or to even have internet access in the home. Or if they do, the internet access does not support speeds or bandwidth to be able to even have a video call like we're having right now. So we're trying to level the playing there and in turn make sure that everyone can stay connected now, and hopefully more so even when the COVID is behind us.
Right. And I know Social Creatures is making a mission to acknowledge that connectedness is a human right. Can we discuss about the importance of acknowledging connectedness as a human right?
Yes, absolutely. So I alluded to it a little bit, but we have seen in our work that connectedness is important for our physical health and well-being. It's not just a nicety. We think of it as a necessity, like having food or access to clean water or shelter, because healthy relationships and having the ability to draw on social support can actually alter our physiology. For example, it can help keep our stress hormone levels at bay. And also, it's a direct link in ways to other basic needs. So when we think about a concept called social capital, we compare that to financial capital, which is money, for instance, that you can use to buy food and water and a home. There's also social capital, which is the value that we derive from social networks. And that includes any sort of social support or services that we can draw upon to help stay healthy, to be feeling our best, and to impart opportunities to succeed in school and in general. When you think about social capital, an exercise that I do with students sometimes is have them imagine what their life might look like if they've never been able to interact with another person. And, that's pretty crazy to think about. It makes you realize how social of a species we are and how much we do rely on one another.
Right. And Dr. Perry, you kind of alluded to it again, but as a neuroscientist and physiologist, can you tell us what can happen in the long term if we lack these things, we lack this connectedness, especially during a tough time like this?
Yes, that's a great question. We have seen time and time again through both longitudinal research and intervention science that individuals who have strong and healthy relationships and the ability to draw on social support are far more resilient in the face of extreme stress or adversity, which many of us are feeling right now in the midst of this pandemic. So, for example, when children are facing adversity, but they have a supportive and sensitive caregiver by their side, that can be a parent or another family member, it can be a teacher, a mentor, they fare much better. And this is true for adults too, and friends, and between romantic relationships as well. They can help keep environmental stress, or at least reduce how much environmental stress can get under the skin to influence physiological development, which can impact things as big as the way that our brains grow and develop. So this is really important, and it's super important that we're ensuring that everyone can still reliably connect loved ones right now, and really beyond too, because our hope as an organization is that we can come back with a stronger normal after the pandemic.
Right, I sure hope so. So earlier, as I spoke in the introduction, we spoke about the digital divide. But we would like to continue exploring how vulnerable communities are feeling through this tech inequality, especially through COVID-19. What has Social Creatures found in regards to the digital divide?
That's a great question. It's a mixed bag of what we found. There's a sadder side to it, and there's a hopeful side to it. So we are finding that if left unaddressed, this crisis is widening opportunity gaps because of this digital divide. So if left unaddressed, we're seeing that populations that are already more vulnerable on average to social isolation are just being further propelled into isolation because they don't have access to tech. But we are also seeing, and I'm not just talking about Social Creatures, we're seeing many people, individuals, organizations, government departments really thinking inclusively and making sure that those who need tech the most are getting that tech in many instances. It's not happening across the board, but it is happening. And for some families and individuals, they're receiving tech in the home and internet in the home for the first time ever. And you can imagine how life-changing that is. So I do see some evidence of hope that although this pandemic is awful for at least some, it's leading to a stronger normal for them.
I know Social Creatures is also spearheading a digital safety net campaign. What does it mean, and what is Social Creatures' goal with this initiative?
Yeah, so we are campaigning right now to create digital safety nets. So when we think safety nets, we can think about just general support, oftentimes social support that we would draw on when we are in need, or when we want a shoulder to lean on, or need a shoulder to lean on. And so many individuals across the board have been rapidly disconnected from typical ways to do that because we're stuck at home. So this is especially important for more vulnerable populations who rely on more extensive services like after school support programs and summer camps, just for example, our support groups. So what we want to be able to do is provide them with a digital solution to be able to continue to engage with these services. So the campaign is creating general awareness, public awareness around the digital divide, and trying to build momentum around this. But at the end of the day, our goal is to equip as many people as possible with tech and internet in the home, as well as software or apps that are safe and can facilitate these social interactions and services, including telemedicine services, tutoring services, just general health and wellness check-ins. But yeah, that's the goal of the Digital Safety Nets campaign.
And you also have partnerships. Can you tell us about those with other organizations?
Yeah, so we have two different types of partnerships. We definitely would not exist if it weren't for our partners. We partner with community embedded and nonprofit organizations who are well established and have been longstandingly working with vulnerable populations so that we can best support their efforts and make sure that vulnerable populations are staying connected. So we're helping these organizations transition to their own digital strategies so that they can continue their services. But then we also, it's a two-way street because then we have a really wide network where we can rapidly distribute the resources that we have or that we obtain to those who need it most. And we're constantly being updated and learning about what the pain points are, where the needs are, and can adjust quickly to meet those needs. But we also partner with tech companies to deploy digital solutions, whether that's hardware or software. And sometimes we also work on co-creating digital solutions to some of the more unique challenges that the pandemic is creating. So for example, one of our major partners is the Family Room, and they have a software that it was created originally for children who have an incarcerated family member. So they are leading experts on curating highly personal interaction, high touch interaction between loved ones within the face of distance. So the whole program was designed specifically for being, kept apart. So working with them to deploy their services and to rapidly kind of develop it further to make it useful for other use cases that need it right now, like tutoring support and schooling support in general. But yeah, that's how we're kind of going about getting through some of the harder pain points that we're seeing as we learn about the barriers to connection.
Right. I think it all sounds wonderful. And thank you, Dr. Perry, for finding this amazing organization. How can people get in touch with and provide support to social creatures?
Yeah, thank you. Our website is thesocialcreatures.org. If you go on there, there's a contact form on the homepage. My email's there. Also, there's links to Twitter and Instagram. We are always looking for ways to help. If you're a nonprofit organization or if you're a tech company and you think you have something that you can help us get out quickly, we'd love to partner with you. And also we're fundraising to support these efforts as well. And we have some cute t-shirts and sweatshirts that we're selling, and all the proceeds from that go towards our cause as well.
I love that. Before we go, Dr. Perry, I also wanted to highlight the Creatures Times newsletter that you have on the website. There was an article recently that you co-wrote regarding the importance of students maintaining social connections during school shutdowns. Can you just tell us a little bit about that article?
Yes, of course. So with that article, we really want to highlight the idea that it's super important to make sure that students right now primarily are feeling really socially and emotionally supported right now. So I think it's easy to get really hung up on homeschooling and making sure that you're staying on top of every single lesson or completing every packet. And we're seeing parents and teachers, they're doing such a good job, and they're having to juggle so much right now, working from home and oftentimes dealing with childcare. And we just wanted to let them know that, as long as you're supporting your students socially and emotionally first, that's the most important thing. If the child is stressed out dealing with, this is a stressful time, they're not really going to be in a state to be ready to learn that well. And no matter what, when COVID is behind us, because that will happen eventually, kids can catch up academically. They can, and they will catch up much quicker if they come back to school feeling socially and emotionally ready to learn. So it's way harder to overcome any effects of long-term stress or trauma than it is to help a child catch up academically when they go back to school. And that's especially true if they come back to school feeling really socially and emotionally supported. So it's just important to make sure that kids and students are staying connected with loved ones, having play dates, even if they're virtual play dates, which of course to be safe is important. That will really help support them, keep their stress levels at bay, and keep them in a state that's ready to learn.
Thank you, Dr. Perry, for joining us today, and thank you for this wealth of knowledge and sharing more about social creatures.
Yes, thank you so much for having me and for helping me spread our mission. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Folks, to learn more and donate, please visit thesocialcreatures.org and follow them on Instagram at socialcreatures with a Z as written below. OpenBxRx will be right back.
The onset of the COVID-19 pandemic has placed a new perspective on the types of jobs that are considered essential. With the need for hospital space and testing sites increasing, so does the need for construction workers.
I can't even imagine what those workers are feeling going to work, knowing that the work that they're doing is because of this deadly disease that is going on, that they are putting themselves at risk in even doing that.
Market Share Development Field Representative for the Greater New York Lesset, Bernard Calgary, represents the District Council for the Local 79 Union. While Calgary respects the work of medical professionals and first responders aiding the city during the pandemic, he feels construction workers are not receiving enough recognition.
Yes, I feel like construction workers do not get their fair share, right? I am by no means trying to put, local 79 laborers on the same level as a nurse that's in the emergency room. However, my members are going to work also on jobs that are deemed essential.
Workers for the Local 79 union have built shelves for mobile morgues and constructed 3 emergency medical ICU units in a matter of 90 days, in areas that do not provide space to socially distance themselves. One worker shared with Calgary why it was so important for her to show up to work.
I know I spoke to one member specifically. I don't want to mention her name, but she was grateful that she's from the Bronx, and she felt like it was an opportunity for her to give back to her community by way of showing up to work.
So far, the Local 79 labor union has expanded hospital capacity for the Brooklyn Methodist Hospital, NYU Langone Medical Center, the North Central Bronx Hospital, and other areas throughout New York. While the work for these essential construction workers increases, those who are not essential workers have started to protest in order to return to work. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo advised these protesters to get jobs as essential workers.
You want to go to work? Go take a job as an essential worker. Do it tomorrow.
The Local 79 construction workers complete 3 weeks of training before working on site. While there is not a quick way to get a job as an essential construction worker, they offer apprenticeships every 6 to 9 months. For more information on Local 79, please visit local79.org. Reporting for BronxNet, Jericho Tran.
Welcome back to OpenBxRx. The YMCA has been serving and strengthening the community for the past 160 years. A lot has changed due to COVID-19, forcing centers to close. But the Y continues to provide remote services and resources, including YMCA at Home. Joining us now to discuss is Charlene Brown, Executive Director of the Bronx YMCA. Thank you for joining us today, Charlene.
Thank you for having me here. You know, the Y is still here for everyone. Building and strengthening community is core to everything we do at the Y. And we've always been committed to supporting New Yorkers, and we're still committed now more than ever.
I love that, Charlene. And of course, I wanted to get into right off the bat, just to learn how the YMCA has transitioned to offering remote services and resources during this tough time.
Oh, there's so many things we have done. You know, we continue every day to find ways to meet the critical needs of those that are vulnerable and even in undersourced communities. Some of the efforts that we have done are with teen services, school-age children services, immigration services, senior services, temporary housing, counseling services, and YMCA at Home, as you mentioned earlier.
Wow. I definitely want to learn more about that. So can you tell us a little bit about YMCA at Home and what activities people can participate in from their homes and how?
Okay. So YMCA at Home, you know, we're here to keeping our communities active and engaged through free virtual fitness workouts, family and kids activities, wellness tips, and more. You know, it's clear that today our health is more important than ever. Yes. Good health helps us live longer, improves our quality of life, and now we learn that it's also protection against illnesses like this coronavirus. So our workouts are for kids all the way to seniors. There's yoga, Pilates, kickboxing, cardio, whatever you're looking for, there's some kind of workout. And then the activities for the families and kids are fun too, and they're engaging.
How are people participating in these workouts? I know that there's like Facebook Lives and stuff. How can people get involved?
Oh, yes. So every day at 12 o'clock, we have Facebook Live, but you can log on to YMCA at Home and download or log into any activity that you want at any time. You know, the YMCA will continue providing programming and updating it daily because it's so important to keep New Yorkers active, fit, and healthy, right from the comfort of their homes.
I love that, Charlene. Thank you for sharing. Can we talk a little bit more about the services in regards to early childhood, teen services, immigrant resources? How can people access these services on the YMCA website as well? And what can they expect when it comes to receiving these services remotely?
Okay, so with our teen services and our school-age services, these are programs that we were doing all years, right in the schools, working with our elementary school kids up to our high school kids. these are services that we have changed over and now we do remotely. Like with the teen services, it's so important with our high school seniors, that we stay connected with them. They're helping them with their financial aid application, with their college acceptance, making sure that they're just prepared for the future that they're about to step into. And with our school age kids, we're right there. We're in the classrooms with the teachers, we're tutoring, we're doing arts and crafts, science projects, fun activities, all good stuff. Now, the immigration services, you go on online and you can look for our immigration services of the New Americans. With that program, we have set up remote services to help them gain necessity things like they need for food, medical care, as well as online learning for adult literacy and citizenship.
So a lot hasn't really changed with the Y. You're still doing all this work, all these services, and providing all these resources remotely, and that's amazing.
That is amazing, and that's the beauty about the Y. We're in the community, and it was just a matter, like so many other organizations have done. How can we do what we're doing to just change over remotely so we can still provide that great service? And I'm so proud that the Y is continuing to provide critical services and health resources to all New Yorkers, especially mostly those that are at risk. We even have some transitional housings where we stepped in and we took in about 100 New Yorkers that were in the hospital that were homeless. They didn't have the COVID-19 to make space for the COVID-19 patients. So the Y has just done what it always do. We haven't missed a beat, and we hope not to. We want to continue doing the good work we've been doing in New York for the last 168 years.
Right. Charlene, can we talk a little bit more about the importance of the Y keeping people active during this time with YMCA at home, and also the importance of keeping these resources going for people regardless of, the social distancing?
It's so important, like I stated earlier, that New Yorkers have this just a good quality of health right now. And being active is so important with it. It's easy for us to stay home and do all the things that we shouldn't be doing, overeating, watching too much TV. But the Y is giving you this opportunity to be engaged, to be active, to stay fit. It's really inspiring to see the strength and innovation that has come out of all these circumstances, that people now actually want to be fit and doing these things. The amount of people who have been on the YMCA at home line, the numbers are really good. It shows that New Yorkers are out there doing what they need to do to take care of themselves and improve their quality of life.
Wow. I also wanted to ask you, Charlene, about the Glebe Senior Center. I know you manage that center as well. How have the seniors been through all of this? How has everything been going?
So the Glebe Senior Centers, yes. So, with our seniors, it's so important that we help combat the social isolation that many of them are facing right now, and to help them stay healthy and connected. So what we do is our staff do weekly reach out calls. We provide this remote engagement, whether they just want to chat, some case management to ensure they have access to their health care, food, and emotional support. So the seniors, they have the resources they need with us. We haven't missed a beat there neither. And most of the time I like to say the seniors love to talk and hear a calm voice, someone they're used to and familiar with. So it's nice to have that impact.
I love that. Charlene, before we go, can we just find out how people can stay in touch, donate to the Y, all that good stuff?
Yes. That's so important. And I'm glad you asked that. Even though we have closed our doors, our membership, and our programs, which has been the source of our funding and strength, are not in session. So it's now more important than ever that we get support and we get help so we could continue doing the great service we have done in New York. So if you'd like to give, you can give at ymcanyc.org/give. And let me just highlight, this Tuesday, May 5th, is Giving Tuesday. So I'm sure all nonprofits and everyone will be reaching out. So make that a day of giving.
Thank you so much, Charlene, for your time and all the work that you do at the Y.
Thank you so much for having me, and you take care and be safe.
You as well. As Charlene said, you can visit ymcanyc.org to find out more about resources and services available to you through the Y. You can also join YMCA at Home activities by following Castle Hill YMCA on Facebook. That's all for our show today. Thank you for tuning in to BXRx. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, wishing you and your family safety and wellness now and always. Until next time.